is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Welcome to my program, The Bridge, a monthly show bridging different cultures, communities, and faith traditions. Watch The Bridge on America's Voice of the Arabs Network on all social media platforms. Good morning, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis. Welcome to another great episode of The Bridge on US Arab Radio, also broadcasting live on Facebook. We have a very interesting topic and great speakers and guests today. We're going to talk about We Refuse to Be Enemies, a story of Muslim-Jewish friendship. It's going to be a discussion by two co-authors. One of them is an American Muslim woman, and the other is a Jewish American man. They both wrote a book together, which is called We Refuse to Be Enemies: How Muslims and Jews Can Make Peace One Friendship at a Time. Such a very interesting title and a very interesting topic, of course. So my guests are Ms. Sabeeha Rehman. She's a blogger, an author, public speaker, and an interfaith activist for many years. Her first book, Threading My Prayer Rug, One Woman's Journey from Pakistani Muslim to American Muslim, was an award-winning book. And my second guest is Mr. Walter Ruby. He's the executive director of Jamaat, or as we call it in Arabic, Jamaat, which is Jews and Muslims and allies acting together in the greater Washington area. He is also the coordinator of the Washington, D.C. chapter of the Rosanna Project, which is a project bringing together Israelis and Palestinians to promote peace through health care. And he is a journalist who worked for more than 30 years as a journalist. Just like Ms. Sabeeha, he is also a blogger, an author, a writer, and a public speaker. So welcome to the show. I'm really glad to have you both with us today and with all the listeners and viewers of US Arab Radio everywhere to discuss this very important topic and this very interesting and important book. Before we start talking about the book and the journey of writing the book, I always say the book writing is a journey. I want to start first by your own long journey in the realm of interfaith dialogue. And I really want to understand the turning moment in your life, the moment when you said, this is the moment I really want to engage in this kind of very important and meaningful interfaith work. Ms. Sabeeha, I'll start with you. And I want to know your starting moment or your turning moment when you said, this is my journey, my destiny. This is what I want to be doing. The platform is yours.
Thank you, Sahar. For me, the turning point was when the Gulf War started. And I was a hospital administrator working at a hospital called, believe it or not, Interfaith Medical Center. And I was confronted by my colleagues when they would come up to me and say, your religion preaches violence. And I would say, no, it doesn't. And they would say, no, it does. And at that point, I realized that I was defending my faith purely on the basis of my belief that this was a religion of peace, but I had no knowledge as to how to argue that with the power of knowledge. And that's when I started studying the Quran, and I came back to my colleagues and said, can we sit down and talk? And that led to weekly Friday sessions over lunch where people of different faith would gather in the cafeteria, and then I would explain to them what is it that I found in the Quran. But informally, my interfaith work started by the sidewalk. It wasn't a moment of, it wasn't a turning point, but it was a starting point. I was a homemaker. I lived in an Orthodox Jewish community, and I and my neighbors, women, we would be standing on the lawn. So I guess that's where grassroots came from, watching our children. And one of them I invited over for dinner. And the conversation led to dietary restrictions. Oh, you don't eat pork either. She invited me over for coffee, and I said, I'm sorry, it's Ramadan. What is that? And one thing led to the other. And that's when I realized that we had so much in common. But not only that, I wanted my Muslim friends to meet my Jewish friends, because my Muslim friends had a very negative opinion of Jewish people. And I wanted them to see how good these women and their husbands were. And likewise, I didn't want my Jewish friends to think that I am unique. I am not like the rest of them kind of Muslims. I am an outlier. I wanted them to meet my Pakistani Muslim friends. So I started inviting them into my home. And that's how that very casual, informal, unplanned interfaith dialogue started. And eventually we graduated into public spaces and started holding talks in mosques and synagogues and libraries. And then our journey took off. But those were the two moments of starting and awakening. And I can go into more detail if you like at another point in this discussion.
Of course, we'll come back to this very interesting point because it's all about building relationships, right? One person at a time, which is really the main essence and the main thrust and theme of your own co-authored book. This is very interesting. And I love your analogy, by the way, on the grass, and that's how the grassroots started. I love this very much. I'm sure you're a great storyteller and a great writer. So I'll move on to you, Walter, and ask you the very same question I just asked Sabeeha. Your own moment when you said, I really want to start to embark on this journey of building interfaith relationships between Muslims and Jews. When and how and where did this moment come?
Okay, so thank you so much, Sahar. This is wonderful. Great question. Well, I started out, as you mentioned, as a journalist, writing for Israeli and Jewish newspapers for many years. I had lived in Israel as a young man. And then I came back to New York and I was covering the Middle East peace process for Israeli and Jewish newspapers based at the UN. And so I got very engaged in it. I mean, I was covering it as objectively as I could because that was my job. But of course, I really believed in it and I believed it would succeed. And during the 1990s, as you know, it looked like we were on the verge of peace after the Oslo Accords. Then when everything crashed and burned in the early 2000s, I felt bereft. I felt like it was a personal tragedy. And of course, I still feel that way in many levels, but I kind of drifted for a couple of years, sort of moving toward, seeing about Muslim-Jewish relations kind of as an alternative. I'm not sure if I even thought it through, but so at least we can do something here. We don't want to import the poison of the Middle East conflict here, God forbid. This is obviously in the wake of 9/11. And then my turning point, I would say, Sahar, it was in 2006. I went to the World Congress of Imams and Rabbis in Seville, Spain. There were a series of these events during that period, but that was the one I attended. And it just really moved me on all kinds of levels because I've been covering the peace process, the political back and forth and negotiating over land. And it seems so sterile. These guys, these imams and rabbis, and these included Palestinian and Israeli imams and rabbis, were engaging on this very interesting intellectual level, but with a lot of passion, discovering the commonalities in the two faiths, which they didn't know, even though many of them were scholars, but meeting the other for the first time. So it showed me that even the experts didn't know that much, but they were so excited to learn. And there was this kind of electricity in the air that just showed, they would stay up all night playing oud and guitar together. And I thought, what, if we can capture that? And I said, at that point, I really want to get involved in Muslim-Jewish relations. Wasn't sure how then, but several years later, I was hired by the Foundation for Ethnic Understanding as Muslim-Jewish program director. And that's where I really started to get working on this going forward. So that was in 2008. So that's kind of how I got to it.
That's great. And both of you are really involved in a number of very important interfaith initiatives and organizations. So I want to also give the listeners and viewers a bit of an idea about this kind of interfaith work, the kind of activities and organizations that you both have been engaged in. And Walter, you are the executive director of Jamaat, or as I said in Arabic, Jamaat, Jews and Muslims and allies acting together in the greater Washington area. I've been involved with this group for a long time now, but I would love to give our listeners and viewers an idea about this particular organization, what kind of initiatives, activities, events, missions you are involved in, and the significance of all of this important work.
Well, we've done a number of things in Jamaat. I mean, basically, the idea is very much, as Sabeeha said, grassroots, bringing the idea of Jamaat. It's a grassroots organization bringing together Muslims and Jews who want to connect, who want to learn about each other. So we've had many fascinating discussions about commonalities in the two faiths. We've done a lot of community service events, feeding the hungry together, visiting the sick, We've held health fairs because we believe that's a very important component, that if Muslims and Jews, there's a moral imperative in both faiths to help those who are most in need, and we want to do that together. We see that as very, very important. And the other piece of it, I would say, is the whole idea of standing up for each other, being there for each other. If a hate crime is committed against either community, or incitement against either community, which unfortunately there's been quite a bit over, as you know, over the last 4 or 5 years. So we feel that it's a very important. We just had a meeting 2 or 3 days ago, and it was wonderful. We had been fairly quiescent during last year because of the coronavirus, but we had a great meeting where we came together and we looked at our agenda. We saw, there were so many, important initiatives that need to be taken right now on so many issues, and so it's that impact Muslims and Jews, and so that's what we do, and of course we did. As you probably well remember, Sahar, the Spread Hummus Not Hate was another one that we did, where we would take a car through or a van through Washington, visiting different sites, including we visited yourself at the University of Maryland, and speaking out, saying, we are Muslims and Jews, we love each other, here we are. It was kind of a public coming out in the streets. We would speak in parks, we went to Congress once or twice. So that's another example of the kind of things we've done.
Excellent. And Ms. Sabeeha, I'll ask you the same question about the organization that you are a board member in, which is Muslim Jewish Solidarity Committee. You can also give our listeners and viewers a brief idea about this particular group and what actually they're involved in, what kind of work, activities, missions they are undertaking.
Thank you, Sahar. So the idea behind the Muslim Jewish Solidarity Committee was that we don't want to wait for Ramadan to come for us to get together, or for Christmas to come for us to get together, or for special events. We need something happening year-round, all the time, that is not focused only on special religious holidays. So the idea was to bring together the youth and the adults across all ages, across all ethnicities, to engage in any activity that drives them. So for example, we may take a walk through the Yemeni neighborhood in Brooklyn and indulge in their foods and in their markets, and go to a bakery, go to a supermarket, and just experience the cuisines of an ethnic neighborhood. Or we could have a class on calligraphy, or we could get together in a living room for an iftar. And there's something for everyone that is going on year-round, all the time. It's led by Michelle Koch. I don't know how she makes the time with a little 5-year-old, but this has flourished in New York City. And I'm really very proud to be a part of it. But then interfaith has an opportunity in every space. So we can have interfaith in our living rooms. And an example of that is that I am part of an interfaith book club with the 3 Abrahamic faiths. Every month we read a book of a faith, and then we get together in our living rooms, pre-COVID, of course, to educate ourselves and understand one another's faith. We have convention halls as another venue where the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom will have its annual conferences, and yet we also bring that conversation into our living rooms. And then in houses of worship, I'm part of a program called Scriptural Reasoning, where the 3 Abrahamic faiths get together, pick a theme, select passages from each of the 3 scriptures, and we study it together and get to understand it not from a teacher's perspective, but from a layman's perspective. So those are all examples of how you can find interfaith dialogue in any space.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And I think something that you both have in common is this kind of interfaith work in action, or faith in action, which is a very important component. We'll come back to this very important and interesting discussion right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
بينما كنا نجلس في بيوتنا مطمئنين، كان علماؤنا يعملون ليل نهار لإيجاد لقاح لفيروس كوفيد-19. شكلت الأبحاث التي انطلقت منذ عقود حول أنواع أخرى من فيروس كورونا نقطة بداية في رحلة استغرقت أشهراً من البحث والتطوير بالتعاون مع خبراء من جميع أنحاء العالم. وبعد الحصول على نتائج سريرية واعدة لعشرات آلاف المتطوعين، توصل العلماء أخيراً إلى لقاح آمن وفعال، حيث تم حتى يومنا هذا تلقيح مئات الآلاف من الأشخاص في ميشيغان. والآن أصبح مصيرنا بين أيدينا لنأخذ اللقاح في أول فرصة ممكنة، ولنستمر في ارتداء الكمامة، ولنأخذ الاحتياطات اللازمة حتى نصل إلى بر الأمان والتحرر من فيروس كورونا. للحصول على أكثر المعلومات مصداقية، زوروا الموقع الإلكتروني michigan.gov/covid-vaccine. هذه الرسالة بدعم من وزارة الصحة والخدمات الإنسانية في ولاية ميشيغان.
Life is a nonprofit charity that's provided humanitarian aid and development to people and communities for over 25 years, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. When disaster occurs here or around the world, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. Please help improve these efforts. Make your tax-deductible donation to Life now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493.
While we've been staying safe at home, scientists have been on a journey. The destination, a COVID-19 vaccine. This journey began decades ago with research into other coronaviruses. Scientists built from there with months of research and development, cooperation with other experts worldwide, and clinical trials on tens of thousands of volunteers of diverse race, age, and health status. They arrived at a safe, effective vaccine, and hundreds of thousands in Michigan have already been vaccinated. But the next step is ours. We need to get the vaccine when we can. Keep wearing masks correctly and taking precautions until we reach our destination, freedom from COVID-19, and getting back to the lives we love. Discover the facts for yourself at michigan.gov/COVID-vaccine. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Get ready for an amazing experience at Ishtar Restaurant on 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Enjoy excellent hospitality from owners Ali Al-Baghdadi and Fatty Bonham, serving the best in Mediterranean food. Try Chef Ali Al-Baghdadi's famous shawarma, the best Iraqi grills and food, and the best Arabic and international dishes. Dine in our authentic atmosphere or take out. Call 586-698-2585 or check us out on Facebook. Ishtar Restaurant practices all CDC guidelines and is open every day 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Have an amazing experience today at Ishtar Restaurant, 3625 15 Mile Road, Sterling Heights.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Welcome to my program, The Bridge, a monthly show bridging different cultures, communities, and faith traditions. Watch The Bridge on America's Voice of the Arabs Network on all social media platforms. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and we're talking today about a very important topic. We refuse to be enemies, a story of Muslim-Jewish friendship based on a co-authored book by an American Muslim woman and a Jewish American man. Sabeeha Rehman and Walter Ruby are my guests today. So I want to continue with this kind of discussion about your interfaith journeys a little bit before we turn to the journey of the book that we're talking about today. And Walter, I know that you are the coordinator of the Rosanna Project in the greater Washington area. That's a very important project. I would like you to quickly give our listeners and viewers everywhere a brief idea about this particular project, how the idea started, why it's important, and the kind of work they're engaged in.
Okay, well, the name Project Rosanna is because it's a little Palestinian girl named Rosanna in 2013 fell out of an 8th story. She lived on an 8th story building, fell off the balcony and fell to the ground and was very badly injured. Her, most of her bones were broken. And they were able to, she lived in just a few miles, a little between Ramallah and Jerusalem. And they were able to get her to a hospital in Israel to Hadassah Hospital, and her life was saved. And that doesn't necessarily always happen, but it did happen in that case. So it led that story, and not only life was saved, but she now has lived a normal life. And her story really was the genesis of the idea of people on both sides working together to both raise the level of healthcare in Palestine, in the West Bank and Gaza, and in West Bank and Gaza both, but also in cases where right now the services, the hospital, the level of the hospitals in the West Bank and Gaza are not so high, to get sick children, especially children with cancer, bring them to Israeli hospitals inside of Israel to save their lives. And so it's really inspired by the aphorism in both of our faith traditions, in the Quran and in the Talmud, that if you save one life, you save the world. So this is an example of kind of people-to-people work. It's just one program of many such programs in Israel and Palestine, bringing people together and through healthcare, for example. So that's what we're involved in. And it's exciting to involve people here in that project, both Jews and Muslims together, in groups like Jamaat and others, to support that work, because, oftentimes here we have the feeling in both communities, well, either we should, if we're going to do Muslim Jewish work, we shouldn't talk about Israel Palestine, because that could lead to discord and blow the whole thing up. Or we do start talking about it and get into big arguments, and which doesn't help either. But here is maybe a third way where together we can make a difference on the ground. We can save lives. We can improve conditions in Palestine, and we think that's very, very important. And it gives people here a sense of, hey, we're doing this together, and Christians also. Let's save lives and improve conditions there as we work toward peace.
Absolutely, very important initiative. Thank you so much. And Ms. Sabeeha, you are an active member of the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, which I've also been involved in for a number of years now. It's a very important group, and I would like you to give our listeners and viewers a brief idea about this particular group, the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, and why it is particularly significant.
Well, thank you for that question, Sahar. The Sisterhood of Salam Shalom is about Muslim and Jewish women coming together to make peace one person at a time. And the idea behind it is that if we can get to know one another face to face, person to person, we realize that we are really not that different. It breaks down barriers, it breaks down stereotypes, and it breaks down misconceptions. So I have found this to be an extremely valuable engagement process on many levels. So as an example, at first when we used to meet, it was in convention halls, but chapter meetings would take place in the living room. So the environment was intimate. We would get together and we were learning about one another's faith. Okay, it's Ramadan, tell us about fasting. It's Yom Kippur, what is your fast like? We have eventually moved away from that now because we have built relationships, and now it is more about, tell me about yourself. In one setting, as we were going around the room, telling each other about ourselves, and the idea was bring an object that means something to you and use that as a means for, tell us about yourself. This Turkish woman had a bracelet, and she said, my father made this for me before he went to jail. Well, of course, everybody's eyes perked up and we all sat up and said, what happened? And she told us the story about her father being an activist in Turkey, going to jail, her then leaving the country, coming over here to seek refuge. Her visa is expiring, her passport is expiring, she doesn't know what to do. And before you knew it, everyone in the room had whipped out their phones, call Hayes, here's a lawyer, do this, do that. We got together, did crowdfunding. Despite her protest, no, I'm fine. And within a couple of weeks, she had a court date. She had everything mapped out for her. She and I still talk. She's moved out of New York now, but when we get together on Zoom, our sisterhood meetings, she is there. So this is just one example of the power of relationships and the power of women who bond together and come together, and you can make a difference in somebody's lives. So that's why I just love being part of the sisterhood.
Absolutely.
There's one other thing. We have a standing rule. You shall not engage in politics for 18 months. And the idea being that let relationships gel, let trust develop. Once you get to that point, then you can talk about difficult subjects. But first, let's just be friends.
Absolutely. And there is a Pew study, Pew Research study, which actually shows that people who happen to know one person from the other faith tradition really have much less hatred, bigotry, and stereotyping of the other compared to those who never met a person from this faith tradition. So those who never met a Muslim, for example, they can have all of these negative ideas and stereotypes and skewed misunderstandings about Islam and Muslims. But if they have just one single Muslim friend, things change dramatically. So I think this idea of building friendship one person at a time, which is really the theme of your book together, is a very important one. And that takes me really to the journey of the book itself. How was the idea of this book born in the first place? Sabeeha, you want to take this one?
Thank you. I had just finished writing my first book, Threading My Prayer Rug, and I realized just as it was going to print that I did not have a blurb of a rabbi. I thought of Walter. Now, Walter is not a rabbi, but he worked for a rabbi. So I sent him an email. I was in Pakistan. I said, Walter, I've written this book, and do you think that Rabbi Mark Schneier would be willing to do a blurb? Walter said, I have to read the book first. So of course I emailed him the manuscript, and this nice Jewish gentleman spent his entire Saturday, his day of rest, doing his homework and reading my manuscript. And then he writes back to me and he says, Sabeeha, the rabbi will be happy to do a blurb. And I have an idea. Why don't the two of us write a book together? He can tell you more about why he thought of that.
This is very interesting. So Walter, please tell everyone, not just me and Sabeeha, but everyone who is listening and hearing right now, what made you interested in joining this journey of writing this particular book?
Well, first I have to say that because I had left, she had asked me about a month earlier to do this, and I had kind of forgotten about it. And only at the last minute, she called on a Friday and said, Walter, I need it by Monday. And I got, oh, there goes my weekend, right? And so I sat down Saturday morning, and I was so immersed in her book immediately. I read it in 4 or 5 hours. I just thought it was a wonderfully written book, very compelling, very honest, funny, but it was just a beautiful book. And then I thought, yeah, maybe. So the idea came to me to ask her to write a book with me, because I had been kind of looking for a while for a Muslim co-author for a book I wanted to write about this movement that we've been involved in for strengthening Muslim-Jewish relations. And, I'd been wanting to do that. I said, well, here's a great writer to do it with if she would agree to do this with me. And then I think you could say that after she agreed, we both really, when we came together, we started working on it in 2017, there were a whole lot of new and difficult issues to address. So that's how we got into it. And then it took us 4 or 5 years to bring it all together to finally finish it.
This is amazing. It seems like an intellectual match made in heaven, actually, when I hear both of you and how you came to this point. We'll come back to this very interesting discussion right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
Enjoy the first Syrian-style cuisine in Michigan. At Damas Cuisine and Catering, you'll find a wide selection of Syrian foods and sweets in our menu, like frike, hoizi, grape leaves with steak, mashawi platter, hot mahashi, char-grilled kebab, shawarma, and much more. Get super fast delivery from Damas Cuisine and Catering right to your door. Order online at damascuisine.com/menu and track your order live. Damas Cuisine and Catering, 28841 Orchard Lake Road in Farmington Hills. Call 248-987-4985.
Are your hands feeling numb? Do you feel pain opening up a jar, turning a key? Are you noticing that your elbow and your shoulder are becoming stiff? Or were you recently injured in your arm? Hello, I'm Dr. Albanjit Katranji. And at the Katranji Hand Center, which just recently opened down the street from the Somerset Mall, we can provide you with the latest in hand, wrist, elbow, and shoulder care. Visit us at www.katranjihandcenter.com to learn the latest techniques that we have to offer you, and I look forward to taking care of you.
Visit us in Troy at 1565 West Big Beaver Road, Building F, or call Katranji Hand Center for an appointment at 248-869-4263. That's 248-869-4263. At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain.
Are you going to start a restaurant or grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Naji Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Naji Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Naji Abood, 734-744-9796.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Welcome to my program, The Bridge, a monthly show bridging different cultures, communities, and faith traditions. Watch The Bridge on America's Voice of the Arabs Network on all social media platforms. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and we are on another episode of The Bridge, streaming live on Facebook and also, of course, on US Arab Radio. We are discussing a very important journey of interfaith work and intellectual collaboration. We refuse to be enemies. A story actually of Muslim-Jewish friendship. And with me are the co-authors of the book, Walter Ruby and Sabeeha Rehman, a Muslim-American woman and a Jewish-American man, talking about their interfaith journeys and how they came about writing this book. So Sabeeha, I want you to give our listeners and viewers an idea about the main theme. What is the main theme, the main purpose, topic, and focus of this particular book?
Thank you, Sahar. So the main idea behind the book is that Muslims and Jews in America, we need to come together, particularly given the climate of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia that surged after the 2016 elections. And we believed that Muslims and Jews cannot afford to let the Middle East conflict divide us here at home. We are Americans first. We live here, not there. And we have to put, if we want democracy and pluralism to survive and thrive, we as minorities in faith need to come together, stand by one another. And for that reason, we decided to convey this message to our readers by outlining what it is that we have in common and why it is so important that we stick together and that interfaith dialogue works. We have done it, we have seen its impact, and we try and demonstrate that in our book.
This is great. And Walter, if you were to summarize the three most important takeaways from this book for our listeners and viewers, besides, of course, what Sabeeha already mentioned, if you want to really come up with the 3 most important takeaways which the readers of this particular book can come away with, what would you say?
Well, I could give you, as Sabeeha started to say, we developed principles that kind of define Muslim Jewish, what brings us together. And so I had already mentioned the theme of you save one life, you save the world, which is in both the Quran and the Talmud. The other one, another one is welcome the stranger, that this is so central to both of our communities, our religions. It's very deep. And also, at this time, we need to stand up for the right of refugees to come to America, including obviously Muslim refugees. So that's a big part of what we've been doing. We stand for Islah and Tikkun Olam. Islah meaning reform, and Tikkun Olam, saving the world, or rebuilding the world, I should say. And these 2 concepts lead us to go out and do social action together, to go and feed the hungry and the other things that I mentioned. And finally, and maybe the most central right now, is standing up for each other in so many ways that we've done and we've seen. It's been a big part of our work from the very, very beginning. We saw so many really inspiring examples of Muslims and Jews standing up for each other, and that led us to, with some of the crises that happened. I mean, under the Trump administration, there was a rally. Today I am a Muslim too, that Sabeeha took part in, and that was in New York, and others like that, where Jews and others came out in support of the Muslim community. And then we saw, obviously, when Jewish cemeteries were desecrated, Muslims across the country raised money and got involved, speaking out. And then most dramatically, after the massacre at the synagogue in Pittsburgh, we saw huge support from the Muslim community, both locally in Pittsburgh and across the country, for the Jewish community. And that was a huge deal, I have to say, for myself, because for me, and so many other Jews, that was a shattering moment. The idea that that had never happened before, that someone had gone into a synagogue and shot Jews at prayer. And I felt for the first time in my life that I wasn't safe in America. Having my Muslim brothers and sisters come out in support just was overwhelming. And I would just say one other thing, that Sabeeha and I think in the process, well, over the years, we had been moving. I think both of us started out very much grounded in our own communities and sort of celebrating our own communities and our own, our religions, our ethnicities. We, in this process, really moved to a point of saying, well, ultimately, it's about being human beings above all. And we're proud. I'm a proud Jew. She's a proud Muslim, and that's very basic to who we are. But our ultimate thing is that we're both human beings, and so we need to be there for each other all the way around, and for any human beings that are being persecuted or incited against.
I think this whole idea of standing up with and for the other is a very important theme, and that's what I meant when I said faith in action, or interfaith work in action. And I remember very vividly and fondly how Jews and Christians and others came up and they really marched with Muslims when there was the Muslim travel ban, of course, and they came out and they said, no Muslim travel ban, we will never accept this to happen, not on our watch, we will not accept that. I remember that very fondly. So Sabeeha, they say timing is everything. The timing of thinking about this book and writing this book at a time when there was this surge, this increase in hatred and bigotry, including anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Can we think of that as a double-edged sword, like, a blessing and a curse, or maybe a blessing in disguise, that there was this whole thing about there's, yes, anti-Semitism, there is Islamophobia, hatred and bigotry, but that also kind of motivated people to come out and act and stand up with each other, and motivated you both, both co-authors, Muslim and Jewish, to come together and write this book. Would you like to comment on that, please?
I absolutely agree with you on this, because often when people say, what do you think the future holds? How do you feel right now? And I tell them that despite everything that has happened, I see this as a blessing in disguise, because something bad happened to make something good happen. Something good came out of it, something terrible that had happened. There was first it was the Muslim registry. We don't even know, we've forgotten about that, because people stood up and said, if you're going to have a Muslim registry, we are going to register as Muslims. And that just went away. And then there was a travel ban and everyone came out. Then there was, the desecration of the cemeteries and the shooting at Pittsburgh. And every time some tragedy took place, it brought us together even more. And I recall that when the travel ban was announced, a rabbi called us from our local synagogue and said to my husband, I'm standing in solidarity with you. I have never been to a mosque. Can I come with you on Jummah prayers? So my husband called the imam, got an appointment, took him there on Jummah prayers. He walked in. Shall I remove my kippah? My husband said, no, keep it on. He kept it on. Everybody could see this very visibly Jewish person standing shoulder to shoulder with the Muslims, saying his prayers. And when the prayers were over, people lined up to come and shake his hand and say thank you. And then a Pakistani man, because he was wearing the Sahar Khamis, so that's how we know, walked up to him and said, I wish I could give you a gift, but all I have on me is my family heirloom, and they are these prayer beads. And he gave his tasbih to him, and he said, this is my gift to you. Something bad happened, and out of it, so much good came out.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more. This is really compelling. This is very touching. This is really beautiful. The fact that, out of this darkness came light, and out of this hatred came love, and out of the tragedy and the hardship and the trouble came a lot of hope and a lot of aspiration for a better future, as we witnessed and are still witnessing in the interfaith work and activities and solidarity between different interfaith groups and activists. So would you like to show us the copy of the book, Sabeeha? Since you have it on hand, can you please show it to our listeners and viewers everywhere, and we can all take a look at it? That's awesome. Congratulations to both of you. And my understanding is it is really going to be published on April 20th, 2021, so very soon. So can you just give us a brief idea? Maybe Walter can tell us where can people actually find the book and how can they possibly order it?
Well, I think, Sabeeha, do you have the full list, Sabeeha? Maybe you want to, there's a number of places, obviously, Amazon.com, Barnes and Nobles, what are some of the other ones? Goodreads, indie books. Sabeeha, do you?
Yeah, so if you want to support the independent bookstores, then just go to indie books and all your neighborhood bookstores are listed there where you can buy it from. Target has it, Walmart has it, Bookshop has it, and Books A Million have it. So all the major outlets, you can order it online. It will be a pre-order today, and then after April 20th, of course, it will be on the shelves. And your neighborhood bookstores, please support your neighborhood bookstores.
That's amazing. That's really great. And congratulations to both of you again on this great effort. Before going to our last commercial break, I want to just quickly say that unfortunately, there are those who are skeptical about the value of all of this interfaith work. Those who are skeptics, those who say, this is all great, it sounds awesome, but the fact is people still have, negative ideas and stereotypes about quote unquote the other with a capital O, right? And these differences are very difficult to bridge. People are still apart, there are still conflicts, the world is still very much a troubled and torn place. Walter, what do you say to these people, these kinds of skeptics who are, saying, no, this kind of interfaith work or dialogue or activity or even co-authorship is not sufficient, it is not enough to bring about peace. We need much more than that. What do you say to these skeptics, Walter?
Sure. Well, when I took the job as a Muslim Jewish program director, I remember I myself was saying, well, I don't know how much I'll be able to accomplish given many years of estrangement between our communities. And Sahar, I was overwhelmed. I was working, this is starting around 2008 through 2017. I was going all around the US and also to Europe and other places, bringing together Jews and Muslims. I was a kind of a matchmaker. I would get a rabbi and an imam in San Diego to do a twinning event together, and then another one in Chicago, another one in Detroit, and all over the US and Toronto, and then later in Europe. Anyway, so sometimes people when I'd be flying to an event. Flying to an event or to bringing these people together. And I'd be sitting on a plane and the guy next to me would say, what do you do for a living? I'd say, well, I bring together Muslims and Jews. And he would look at me like I was crazy first, and then he'd say, "Oh my God, that must be the worst job in the world." And I would say, "No, it's the best job in the world because it's been so successful. I've been able, and I've seen so many people coming together through this effort, getting to know each other, building relationships, and then bringing others with them, so bringing, if a rabbi and imam make that connection, they do a program, they bring, hundreds of people from their respective congregations and youth groups and women's groups. And, and what I saw was that our two communities really want this, really need this they wanted to know about each other and work together. And so it worked really, really, really well. I mean, I've seen it work. I've seen this really become a movement over the last 15 years. Unfortunately, not enough people know about this movement, Sahar, and that's why this program is so important, and others. And that's why we wrote the book, to bring this story out, but to say it really, really can work. We've seen it work, and it's really, really the most inspiring thing in the world.
Absolutely, I cannot agree more. I'll come back to Sabeeha with this question right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
When it comes to reproductive medicine, IVF Michigan fertility centers are the recognized leaders. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 5 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. As a founding member of IVF Michigan Fertility Centers, Dr. Nicholas Shama is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. Dr. Shama has performed over 10,000 IVF cases and has helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. American board certified in both obstetrics and gynecology and reproductive endocrinology and infertility, Dr. Nicholas Shama is a very caring, compassionate, expert physician that understands not only the medical but also the emotional toil of infertility on his patients. When it's time, get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio. Call toll-free 855-952-9600, 855-952-9600.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
When you're looking for the best in optical care, Dr. Imad Nakash is your doctor to see. With years of experience and thousands of successful procedures performed, you can trust your eyes to Dr. Imad Nakash. See Dr. Imad Nakash and his professional staff for your eye care needs. There's 2 locations to serve you. In Hazel Park, call 248-336-3937. 248-336-3937. In Rochester Hills, call 248-299-3937. That's 248-299-3937.
Kashat's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab offers a great array of your favorite Mediterranean meals. Meals range from lamb specialties, shawarma sandwiches, seafood dinners, and they offer special big trays of your favorite food, plus much more. Kashat's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab address is 32839 Northwestern Highway in Farmington Hills. Their phone number is 248-538-9552. That number again is 248-538-9552. And the supermarket is open from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Kashat's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab will definitely leave you satisfied.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Welcome to my program, The Bridge, a monthly show bridging different cultures, communities, and faith traditions. Watch The Bridge on America's Voice of the Arabs Network on all social media platforms. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and we're talking today about an important new book, We Refuse to Be Enemies, How Muslims and Jews Can Make Peace, One Friendship at a Time. And I have the honor and pleasure of having the 2 co-authors with me today, Ms. Sabeeha Rehman and Mr. Walter Ruby, talking about their interfaith journey and also the journey of writing this important new book. Before going to the commercial break, we were talking about the skeptics, those who are saying, oh, this is all great, but actually does not help to bring about international peace. We need much more than just interfaith dialogue. We are not convinced that all of this great, rosy picture is enough. Sabeeha, what would you say to these skeptics?
You know, I used to ask this question of people that there are many people who are not willing to engage in interfaith dialogues. We want to tell them our stories to convince them that this works. And what do we do? And I was advised that there are some people who will not engage in interfaith dialogue because they're skeptical about it. They believe that it's no use, or they have misconceptions. So the way to get to them is tell your stories to us, meaning those people who are willing to listen, share your stories with us, and we will tell your stories to them. And that is what I have found to be highly effective, because I and Walter have done many talks recently, and it has opened so many other doors. Each time we give a talk, at least 4 or 5 different organizations will reach out and said, we were in the audience, can you come and talk to us? So even though there is resistance, there are always a couple of skeptics in the audience who come there to listen with the idea that, all right, we'll hear them out, but we're not going to go take the second step, and they walk away feeling convinced. A Jewish friend of mine once told me, we were leaving an interfaith event, and she said to me, Sabeeha, when I came to your book talk, when I wrote my first book, Threading My Prayer Rug, I and a few Jewish women said, we're going to go hear her out, but we are not going to buy her book. She said, after the talk was over, I was the first to stand in line, and all the women with me picked up a copy of your book. And she said, I can tell you this now because we've come a long way in our relationship. So I would say to these people, just come and hear us out. Hear us out and watch the magic work. And then, yes, interfaith dialogue is not enough, but you first have to have the dialogue. You have to make relation, then you have to become friends. That will lead to becoming advocates and ambassadors and allies. And then you go and speak up for the other and defend the other and stand up for them, and then do work together, just as Walter talked about Project Rosanna. So from skeptics to hearing the stories, to becoming friends, to becoming advocates, to becoming partners in action. And there's a process. There's a process.
Absolutely. And becoming activists on the ground as well. I would say that both your journeys, you have a lot in common, being bloggers, writers, public speakers, authors, but also being interfaith activists on the ground. In other words, you are translating words into action, which is very important for people to actually see, right? So they can get some kind of tangible evidence. This is actually working, because people are, working, they're standing side by side, shoulder to shoulder, and turning all of these great words into action, which is why I think this whole element of the interfaith in action or faith in action is a very important one. And I think, Sabeeha, I'll have you back on the show at some point to talk about your first book, Threading My Prayer Rug, One Woman's Journey from Pakistani Muslim to American Muslim. I find it to be very fascinating. So I think this will be another program or another discussion sometime soon. One theme I'd like to touch upon in the very few remaining moments we have in the program is this whole Rumi quote. Rumi, of course, being this famous, writer and poet and Sufi mystic, who actually said, pain is the hole through which light enters the heart. In my case, as the mother of an autistic young man, that was how my interfaith journey started, through empathy with others who had similar situations, similar challenges in their own lives. Sabeeha, I know that you are a board member in the National Association for Autism, National Autism Association in the New York area. If you can briefly tell us, how did this experience of having a grandson with autism influence your involvement in interfaith work? Briefly, please.
How it took me into interfaith work?
Yes.
Yeah. So when my grandson Omar was diagnosed with autism, I gave up my career as a hospital administrator to start this chapter of the National Autism Association. And being in the autism world changed my life. It was one thing to be a grandmother, but it was a whole other thing to be amongst parents who were raising children with autism and dealing with issues, anything, anywhere from diet to social issues to being nonverbal. And I and my husband, we began to see the world differently. We began to experience it differently. In earlier years, if we saw a parent with a handicapped child challenged in different ways, we would not know what to say. And we would kind of freeze up. And now I could tell an autistic child from a mile away and start a conversation as soon as I got close to the parent about, and just comparing notes. So it made us very open to engaging with people in similar circumstances, but also developing empathy and compassion. And it changed our lives and it changed our worlds. And that, and at the same time, as I started this organization, I started working for the American Society for Muslim Advancement, which was doing interfaith work because of that connection of building compassion and having empathy and expanding your world to people who are different from you, and in making them part of your life. So autism being a grandmother of a child with autism had definitely that connection of empathy leading to more engagement in interfaith work.
And in this case, I would say turning pain into action, right? Not just turning your faith into action, but turning your personal pain into action. Walter, very briefly, if you wish, this is a voluntary question, like, you have every right to answer it or not to answer it, but did you have any kind of quote unquote personal pain through which you felt motivated to engage in this type of work?
Well, just off the cuff, I guess my deep pain of seeing as I mentioned at the beginning, the collapse of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, which I cared about so deeply. And I just, it's at that point I said, well, maybe my whole life work is a failure, because of that. But I just was able, and I feel very fortunate because it was a certain, happenstance, but I was able to move into this Muslim Jewish work and play a role, be there from almost the beginning of this movement, and really play a role in helping to bring Muslims and Jews together. And so that's been a great gift, and made me very fulfilled to be able to continue to do this. And obviously we still have so much more work to do, Sahar, as you know. I mean, the issues are still very much out there. The administration has changed, but this kind of xenophobia and hatred is still out there, as we've seen even in recent weeks with these shootings. So we have a lot of work to do together, and Muslims and Jews, as the two largest minority religions in America, really need to stand together and defend democracy, human rights, and pluralism in this country. So it's really vital.
Excellent. We have like a couple of minutes left in the show. Unfortunately, good times always fly quickly, as they say. And tomorrow, March 27th, marks the Passover for Jews, and it's also the International Muslim Women's Day. Interestingly, a very interesting coincidence. So I would like, in the remaining few, basically less than 2 minutes in the show, Sabeeha, if you want to send a message to the Jewish people on the occasion of Passover, what would you say?
I would say have a very blessed Passover. Have a wonderful, festive Seder meal. And as you share the stories of the Exodus, we will be thinking about you, because in our religious history, we have also the story of Prophet Muhammad's migration and how that was the turning point in the Islamic history. So we share many of those meaningful moments. So I wish you a very, very blessed Passover.
Thank you so much. And Walter, the floor is yours in very few seconds. What message do you send to Muslim women internationally on the occasion of International Muslim Women's Day?
Well, I've gotten to know many Muslim women over the last 15 years, and I just like them, respect them so much. And they're dealing with many issues, and I just want them to let them know that many Jews are there for the Muslim community, and it's just we're together. And so that would be my message.
Excellent. On this excellent note of solidarity, of coexistence, of friendship, we will end this program and this great discussion, but I'm sure your journeys of interfaith work and co-authorship and activism will not end here. I'm sure this is only the beginning. Thank you so much, Ms. Sabeeha Rehman and Mr. Walter Ruby, for being our guests today on The Bridge. And thank you also for all the great work that both of you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mabruk.
Thank you so much. Congratulations to both of you.